from each happily ever after, every wish upon a star. Let's break down the movies that shaped who we are, from memory lane to now and everything in between. The most famous of films to the ones we've never seen. Decade by decade, all the times we laughed and cried, and with a little pixie dust, they will all take flight, reliving the feelings, and we're trying our very best. And if they mean the same to you, please be our guest. So hop aboard, we would love to have you as we hang with a certain mouth, the whole gang too. If you love nostalgia stuff, we hope this does the trick. Thanks for joining us as we deep dive the magic.
Hi, and welcome back to the Deep Diving the Magic podcast. I'm KJ.
And I'm Jeffrey. And
this is Faye.
And this is Faye hanging out with us. So we are back today with the 57th Disney feature-length film from April 5th, 1962. It is a live-action film titled Moon Pilot. Now, have you ever heard of Moon Pilot before this?
I had never heard of Moon Pilot before this. I'm
interested to know if people have heard of it. So it is based on the 1960 novel titled Starfire by Robert Buckner. And would you like to start us off with a synopsis or some opening thoughts and facts about Moon Pilot?
Sure. Away on short leave before an upcoming moon launch, a NASA astronaut disappears and is feared kidnapped when the security services learn about his friendship with a suspected foreign female spy.
A NASA astronaut? Wouldn't you just call him an astronaut?
No.
Okay. Any other facts or anything before we dive into the film?
Sure. All right. So Hollywood's heartthrob, Tom Tyrone, is the lead actor. He was a popular Disney star at the time. He later transitioned into a successful career as a novelist, writing works such as The Other and Harvest Home. Also, French actress Dani Saval, I might have butchered her name, who plays Lorraine. The woman, I won't spoil it. I was going to do a spoiler, sorry. No. A woman who had a relatively short-lived Hollywood career, but left a lasting impression with her quirky and mysterious portrayal. I would have to say she is definitely one of my favorites of the film. This was Disney's first space comedy. Moon Pilot was one of Disney's earliest films exploring the space theme, blending lighthearted comedy with a Cold War era space race intrigue.
Keep going. I'm confusing myself. Keep going.
Okay. The voice of Chimpanzee's translator device was provided by Paul Frees, as a Disney regular known for his voicing iconic characters like Ludwig von Drake and narrating the Haunted Mansion attraction.
Who's this?
Paul Frees.
Oh, I knew that. I didn't know he was in this. The reason I looked it up is you said that the main actor guy was like a Disney legend, and I was like, he hasn't been in any movies. Tom Tyrone or Tryon, I'm sorry. But he's been in a bunch of like the TV shows, like the Disneyland TV show and like the Frontier. So that's what I was looking up. I was like, wait, he wasn't in any movies, but he was all on TV shows.
Yeah. So it kind of a little bit of trivia. The Cold War paranoia. The film satires the paranoia surrounding the space exploration during the Cold War, with its bumbling government agents and tongue-in-cheek take on UFOs and aliens. So, I mean, at this point, it was we have to do it first. No matter what country you're from, we have to do it first. So it's like definitely a race, time crunches, trying to be the first to do space exploration, because I don't know what's going to happen if we're not the first, but we have to be the first. NASA cooperation. The filmmakers consulted with NASA for authenticity, but the portrayal of space exploration remains comedic and whimsical rather than realistic. Uncredited contributions. While Robert Buckner's novel inspired the screenplay, Disney made significant changes to adapt it to a family-friendly comedy. Hidden Mickeys. Fans speculate that some of the star formations in the film's film space scenes may contain early attempts at Disney's Hidden Mickey Easter eggs. So keep an eye out for that. If you do watch this, I would recommend that you watch it. Astronaut Fever. It was released during the height of the space race. Moon Pilot capitalized on public fascination with astronauts and space travel, making it a timely and entertaining movie for families. It also had legacy on TV. So, like many of the early Disney films, Moon Pilot gained a cult following through frequent reruns on the Disney Channel in the 1980s and 1990s, introducing it to new generations.
Sorry, I was doing a deep dive of my own over here on the guy that was on all those TV shows. Sorry.
Okay. This charming film remains a nostalgic gem for fans of vintage Disney and 1960s pop culture.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. So I have some other things to say, but I will definitely say that once we dive in.
All right. So we're ready to dive in then.
Sure.
All right. So we see a rocket launch during the opening credits. We see on the screen that it says our sincerest appreciation to the U.S. Air Force for their cooperation. We see that the space staff on the ground are watching very intently and excitedly. And they say, orbiting the moon is one thing, getting back here alive is another.
Mm-hmm.
So that just says that they're watching somebody that's been the ship is orbiting the moon.
Mm-hmm.
There's a senator who we've seen in some films previously. He is very stressed out, and he's stressing out the whole entire crew.
And he's not only stressed out, but he's completely clueless.
Yeah, he's stressing out
like
everybody.
He doesn't know what's going on. But wants to rush out to tell the press about things, and it's like, dude, that's not the time to be doing this right now. Hold your horses.
So, and then we cut to an actual airplane, and there's the crew of the airplane. They see the spacecraft parachuting back, mm-hmm. and they successfully recover it. Mm-hmm. They bring out the pilot that orbited the moon. And we learn that it is a chimp named Charlie, the first chimp to orbit the moon.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense, because the whole time I was sitting there thinking to myself, why, if we're wondering, because it was kind of at that point unknown, obviously he was alive when he got launched, and they had vitals and stuff on him to monitor him, but then it's when he came back down and landed, they were well, because at one point they said he was space high or whatever, or space drunk, and it's well, now we have to wait and see when he comes down if he's still alive. And I'm sitting there thinking, why don't they just, if they can monitor him from the ground, why don't they just talk to him? If that makes sense.
Yep. They throw the chimp a celebratory dinner, mm-hmm. and but then they discuss that they have to send a man to the moon next, and they only have to the end of the week because they aren't the only nation shooting for the moon.
Yes, and they specifically have to do it by the end of the week because of the trajectory of where the moon and the Earth are at that moment. Mm-hmm. Because if they wait, they have to wait for 3 months for this trajectory, I guess, to be back in place to do it again.
So at the celebratory dinner, we see Charlie smoking a cigar, the chimp smoking a cigar, but
that he grabbed from someone else.
Yes, nobody is volunteering for this. Mm-hmm. Nobody's volunteering to be the guy that will go up in a few days.
So the leader of them is asking, one of you brave men, I won't volunteer you because I don't want to pick favorites, but one of you should volunteer for this mission. And you see all these men dressed in their Air Force attire sitting there at the table, and you can see everyone's on pins and needles because nobody wants
Nobody's
to
volunteering.
like volunteer themselves. There was one guy several times that kind of starts to get up, but then he's like, no. And I was just like, is he getting up to run? Like, what's he doing? And then you have this poor guy that's trying to like help take care of the chimp, and Charlie's over here throwing stuff, and he throws his spoon because he's like sitting like in a high chair or something. He throws his spoon with what looks like yogurt or something in it off to the side. So this guy gets up and bends over to get it, and Charlie stabs him in the butt with a fork. And needless to say, he shoots up, and guess who volunteered himself?
That's right. Charlie tricks one of the men into to jump up and get volunteered, and they show them his name is Captain Talbot.
Poor him.
Captain Talbot is our volunteer.
And everybody's like cheering, like, yay! And he's just like,
oh no,
I did not do that.
So no one outside the base knows about this except for the president, and no one is allowed to leave the base until the launch. And Talbot is upset because he can't go home.
Yeah, he wants to see his mom before all this happens.
So he says that he will not go on the shoot unless they go home. Yep. And then a bunch of yelling and
they're like, so you're not going to tell anybody?
Nope.
Not even your mom. Like, you wouldn't tell your mom? Like, you wouldn't want to worry your mom. And I can't remember if it was the leader of them or if it was the senator, but somebody said, moms know these things. Yeah. All moms are psychics. Yeah. And I thought that was funny.
Yeah. So a lot of yelling happens. There's actually a lot of yelling in this film. But long story short, he's granted 3 days leave. So he goes and he asks the chimp Charlie about, how's it going to go?
Like, what was your experience?
But like? Charlie just hits him in the face. He's just jumping around. He's just being a crazy chimp.
Yeah. And at that point, he realizes Charlie's changed. Yeah. So he's trying to tell the general, like, listen, like, something is not right with Charlie. Like, he used to be nice and now and friendly, and now he's mean.
Yep, I wrote it down here. He says he goes to the major and he says that the chimp has gone crazy. Lunacy.
Yeah. The moon.
Yeah. So they tell him that while he's gone, he can't do anything before the launch. No food, no girls, no foreign spies.
Yeah. And don't trust anyone because spies can be dressed up like anyone.
Yeah.
And they give him what looks like tubes of toothpaste. But he's got several days worth of them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that's all he can eat because he can't even have one bite, they said, because they need him to shrink his stomach before he goes up into space with no gravity.
So on the flight home,
and he wanted to take a bus. It was going to take a bus.
Oh yeah. He's like I don't like flying.
What was it? Half a day there and then a half a day back because he said I'm not big on flying.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking, and then nobody's picking up on you did not volunteer yourself.
So he does get on an airplane.
Yeah.
And on the flight home, he won't take the stewardess's food.
Because he's nervous.
But he idiotically takes a random person's medicine. Another passenger gives him medicine. And it's this girl. And all the men are going goo-goo for her. But then he begins to think that
she's kind of dressed up like a beatnik.
Yeah. A beatnik. And like she's like reading a book on how to speak English. And he's like, oh no, I just took medicine from a foreign spy. We learned that her name is Lyrae or Lyrae. Lyra.
I thought it was Lyrae.
Yeah.
This is where Candice LeRae got her name.
No. So she basically reads his mind.
What about if it is?
Maybe. She does love Disney.
She's a Disney fan. Maybe she watches our podcast. If you are watching this, please get back to us on if this is what inspired your name. Okay.
So she basically reads his mind. She knows he's a captain. We saw her at Disney. So she knows that he's a captain. So he's nervous.
Yeah, because he's like, how does she know? And I thought whatever she gave him
medicine.
is helping her to read his mind.
Maybe we'll find out. No spoilers.
But because he keeps thinking like, how does she know what I just thought? I didn't say that.
So while leaving the airport, he gets picked up by his younger brother, who is played by our Disney dear friend Tommy Kirk. Mm-hmm. But then LeRae runs after them, but they drive off, and he makes it home to mom. He decides that
he gets picked up in the airport from his little brother,
yeah,
who is
Tommy Kirk. I just said that.
But Tommy has plans, and he has a date, and he wants to set him up.
That's right.
And he asks about the lady at the airport.
Yeah.
And the guy literally was like, no, just keep going.
Yeah.
Like, she's weird. As she's running out to him. And he stops. But then he's like, no, just keep going. Yeah.
So she says, I'm not going to go on, I don't want to go on a date because I'm going to hang out with my mother. Mm-hmm. But he gets home and his mom's like, oh, I have bridge club. Sorry.
It's bridge club. Every Thursday night. You should have given me a little more warning.
Yep. So then he decides to go for a walk during his mother's bridge club. He stares at the moon very nervously, and he gets spooked by a black cat. And then we see LeRae again. She comes out of nowhere. She comes up to him, knowing all about his upcoming mission and that there is an issue with the rocket. And he flees from her at this point. He is convinced she's a foreign spy. Somebody almost hits her with a car.
Mm-hmm. And then the guy, like, just yells, hey, watch where you're going. And then he like sees her again. He's like, hey, where are you going?
Hey,
like, yeah, Joy Tribbiani there.
Right.
Hey, how you doing?
So he gets back home. He immediately decides that he's going to call the Air Force Base in the general. Mm-hmm. Mr. Cigar smoking yelly guy answers the phone. You'll never guess what he does. He yells some more.
Didn't we determine that he was the dad from The Parent Trap?
He is the dad from The Parent Trap, but he yells a whole lot in this film.
Yeah.
I actually was reading about him. It's kind of sad, but I won't go into too much detail about his death. But he had like lung cancer from how much he smoked, and he smoked a bunch in this film. Mm-hmm.
I could see that.
So he tells the general about his supposed spy. Mm-hmm. And they at the Air Force Base, they instantly think that the senator is the leak. But they command, I don't know what the guy's name is. What's the main character's name? Talbot. They command Talbot that he has to get on the first bus to San Francisco. So he gets on a bus, and while he's on board, he gets joined by a suspicious-looking guy who we learn is from federal security. Mm-hmm. He tells security that he took some pills on the plane, but he refuses to tell security guy any information after blowing his spot, because remember, he's not allowed to tell anybody anything.
Yeah, and the whole time I was sitting there thinking, what about if a foreign spy picked him up instead of like who was supposed to pick him up?
Yeah.
I was real paranoid about that the whole time. But he did have the pill bottle still. Mm-hmm. And he said, she gave me this.
He's gonna send it off to be checked.
And then he was like, okay. And then he like calls for the people he's working with. He's like, here, I want this sent to the lab and tested. And see if there's an antidote.
So then
just what about if it has long acting effects or something? And I was just like, and he's like, did you feel anything? He's like, yeah, I felt better.
Yeah. The two men get led into a hotel by another suit-wearing man. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And he calls the Air Force Base collect, but we learned that the phone is bugged by Social Security or by physical security anyway.
Yeah, because he was like, excuse me, this is a private call.
But he calls collect.
Yeah, and he was like, okay, it doesn't matter. The line's tapped anyway.
Yeah, the phone's bugged. There's more yelling, but this time from the physical security guy. Yeah. They get told to guard him with their life. Mm-hmm. And the rest of his leave has been canceled, and he that's an order. He has to come back.
Which at that point it's like, why? It doesn't really matter anyway. Your mom's busy, your brother's busy.
He doesn't want to be there. Room service gets delivered for Talbot and the security guy, but Talbot remembers he's not allowed to eat anything.
As he cuts up a piece of meat and almost has it to his mouth, and then he hears the lady's voice in his mind say, "Not even one bite."
Yep. So
he pulls out his suitcase.
The security guy begins to think that he's a medical experiment, but again, Talbot won't tell him.
Yeah,
he eats his tube.
He's like, I've got my own food.
Yeah, he eats this little tube of whatever.
He's like, oh, excuse me, that's lunch.
And then
or dinner or something. I don't know, whichever meal they weren't eating. And squeezes it into his spoon and sits there and eats it.
Yep. So they move like the food around on the table, like the paper, and they see a napkin that has a note from Lorraine on it, telling him to stop avoiding her. So ...
Your life depends on it.
The plot thickens here.
Something to that effect. Your life depends on it.
The plot thickens that she knows that he's in there. So the security guy is like, we have to go find this person. We have to go question the people.
She is in the building.
In the kitchen staff. So he leaves, and Talbot is about to shower. He turns the shower on. He takes off his shirt, and then right then, Lorraine walks into the bathroom, needing to talk to him. She's very concerned with, he's very concerned with how she got into the locked room. He accuses her of being a spy. She says that she's only trying to help him. And she said that she's not an enemy spy because she's coming to give information and not seek information. And she only wishes is to save Talbot's life. Like, she's only here to help save him. And that if he tries, he will fail. And then she says, what happened to Charlie will happen to you.
And he said, how do you know about Charlie?
Yep. So that means that Talbot was right earlier.
And this whole time I'm sitting here thinking, oh boy, like she has really got like whatever that pill was.
Yep. So that means that he was right earlier about Charlie going crazy. She talks. She wants Talbot to come with her, but he has to shake the security guy. But then the security guy gets back because he hears a woman's voice, and he tears apart the whole hotel room trying to find the spy lady. But
with
then
Talbot following him, looking at everything he's looking at.
Also trying to figure out where she went.
Yeah, because at that point he probably is like, I don't know how she got out of here. Did she get out of here?
He's like looking out the window and stuff. So then he tells the security agent that it must have been the television that he heard because there was a lady's voice on the TV. So then Talbot's like, look, I just want to get away for like a half an hour. And the guy's like, nope, you're coming with us. So he takes him down to the lobby. But at the same time, in the lobby, there's like some kind of like, I don't know, like an election party because everyone has like pins on it.
It was some kind of convention meeting.
Yeah.
It wasn't really an election, but
they all had like vote for me pins.
Maybe it was because technically that they had made reference to it being election year that year. So I guess maybe it was like some kind of. So
the bunch of people mistake Talbot for somebody else, which allows him to shake the security guy and run outside. He runs into Lorraine in a park. He's like, how did you get here? Blah, 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 blah. And then she gives him a note on how to protect him from what happened to Charlie and the proton rays. Something about beryllium paint. I don't know if you got like the exact, but like
I didn't write it down. She was like, it's this formula. This is what you need to do to line the spacecraft that you're going up in. And he was like, oh, well, we used da, 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 da. And then he like kind of looks at her like, I probably shouldn't have said that. And then she was like, yes, but we've been using this for years, and that's what's wrong, because what you're using is okay, but not where you're going. You have to line it with da da da, because we've been using this for years. And he's like, where are you from?
Yeah. So she doesn't want to answer where she's from.
And she's got this accent, so you legit are like, where are you from? I would like to know.
So
you know so much about me. I would like to know a little bit about you.
Yep. So he just keeps bringing it up and forcing the issue, and then she finally tells him that she's from a different planet.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name of the planet. I didn't write it down. But
I didn't write it down because I thought it was weird to pronounce, so I wasn't sure exactly how to spell it.
yeah, so she's from a different planet, which answers a whole lot of questions. And
he doesn't really believe
yeah,
her.
he is a believer. So she's like, all right, I will show you your future. So then all of a sudden this like little kid walks up and we find out that it's Talbot's future child. And then the kid
he had like a jacket hood on or something, and she pulls the jacket hood off of him, and he was like, "Who are you?" And he said, Richmond.
Yeah.
And he's like, "That's my name." And then she pulled the hood off of him, and he can see like his hair and stuff. And then he looks at her and he's like, "Is this our child together?" And she was like, "Yeah, I can't control what it shows you." And then you just see the little boy disappear.
Yep, he disappears
right in front of him.
So clearly he's beginning.
Yeah, because she's like, I have no control over what it shows you.
Yeah.
And apparently, you find out at that point, because he was like, "Well, how if I take you to these people, how are you just going to show them something so that way they'll believe you? Because I believe you now, but how are these other people going to believe you?" And she's like, "I can only do this for you."
Right.
Like she can't.
She's been watching you for many, 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 many years or whatever.
Yeah, and she can't pull things up from the future for him. Other than him.
So at the same time, we see that the general gets on an airplane. He's coming to Talbot himself. There's probably a whole lot of yelling happening on that airplane. So then Lorraine and Talbot, they're hiding from security. They're sightseeing around the town. They almost share a romantic moment, but they're forced to hide from the police. The general shows up to the security agents, and he finds out that Talbot's not there. There's more yelling. But then the general finally tells the security that Talbot's going to the moon. Like that's what's happening. The guy's like, "Oh, so I've been watching this famous guy for all this time or whatever." And this is at the point where Talbot and Lorraine kiss for the first time, but she's never done that before because they bite ears on her planet instead of kissing, and she wanted to do that again. Anything on that, or that's the gist of it?
It's just kind of comical. She's like, "What was that?"
Yeah.
He's like, "That's a kiss."
But
she's like, "Oh, I've heard of that, but I've never done that."
She convinces him to then call the general to be like, "Look, I will fly for you as long as you put this stuff on this spaceship for me." But they trace the phone call. It's like a payphone from the pier.
Keep him on the phone. Don't let him hang up.
General does more yelling.
Track this call.
Like he's like talking to him about like the pavilion paint and stuff, but he can't tell him why he knows that. Blah blah blah. He ends up making a deal with the general about the paint to save his life. But then he's taken into custody by the security officers who bring him back to the headquarters where General Yelly Pants is waiting for him. But at the same time, they also bring in like this guy who like witnessed the whole thing from the wharf, who saw that he was on the phone kissing a lady. And then they make him and Talbot watch this like witness lineup to like try to find beatniks. There was like 3 different groups of girls and ladies to like,
and the major actually asked him, he's like, "What do you see in these people?"
Yeah. It's a very entertaining scene where they're all like yelling and they're all like all over the place,
reciting poetry, dancing. Like each one of them has their own little quirks.
None of them are the right lady.
One of them, like I guess it's like the 3rd or 4th lineup, walks in and you see her like walking in backwards, like she's being pushed in or whatever, and her hair and her outfit matches kind of what the Lorraine had on the plane.
Oh yeah,
and he was like, and then she turns around and it's like, "Oh God."
I read a thing and I don't know for sure, but it's like supposedly it's like
looked like something off the Rocky Horror Picture Show when it turned
around. One of Sally Field's first like movie credits was she was one of the people in the lineup.
In the lineup, nice.
She'll be in Forrest Gump in how many years? So at the same time, so none of these ladies are the right person, but at the same time, that the lab reports come back from from the pills from the plane,
Mm-hmm.
and they contain no elements known on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even the bottle, no elements known on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, we don't know what this is.
Yeah, and also the ink and the paper that they had found in the hotel, apparently they had also tested, and he said, and none of that is also any material that we have known on Earth.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's interesting.
So Talbot
Do
is
they believe now?
nope. Talbot is promising that the general he's like, I didn't break any rules. I didn't eat food.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't no foreign spies.
Mm-hmm.
He did kiss a lady, but whatever. So then it cuts to the next scene, and Talbot is gonna do this space launch.
Mm-hmm.
Like they must have painted it like he wanted,
mm-hmm.
and he's about to do this space launch. They do the countdown. The spaceship begins to launch. It's like shaking all over the place. I wonder if it feels like Mission Space at
Epcot. I think I looked over at you and I was like, those scenes where the launch is happening literally make me nauseated.
Yeah, like Mission Space at Epcot.
Like, I don't think I've ever watched anything on TV that has ever made me slightly motion sick, but those scenes did it for me.
So they radio into Talbot, and he's like, that first stage was a sure Lulu.
Yeah.
But we see that Talbot's all alone in the spaceship. He is like admiring space.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happens? But LeRae appears right next to him in the rocket.
Mm-hmm.
And the general hears a female voice from the command center.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, that's impossible. Like, there's no way.
What's happening to his voice?
Yeah.
Sounds like a woman.
She tries to convince Talbot to come with her to her planet, and then she starts to sing to him about it. Mm. So Talbot, he reaches back out to them, to the yelling general, and he's like telling them, he's like, I'm going to be late on my return mission. I'm going to her planet. And they're all very confused. And then they all sing over the contact system. The general yells a bunch, and the end of the film. Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear your thoughts, your rating, and maybe if you have anything else to say before I list Upon a Star about Moon Pilot.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
Okay.
I didn't think I was going to.
Okay.
But I did kind of think it was interesting. Like, what did this come out in 1962?
62.
Okay.
The year before JFK was assassinated, I think.
Do you know the month it came out? I feel like you said that at the beginning, but I don't remember.
April, maybe.
All right.
How old were you? Just kidding.
-0.
-0. You mean negative many? Go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't born yet, so I wasn't. I thought. Anyway.
Neither were your parents.
So anyway, the first chimpanzee that we sent to space was named Ham. He was the first chimp in space. Ham was short for Hollow Man Aeromed. He was a male chimpanzee trained for the mission. He was named after Hollow Man Air Force Base in New Mexico, where he was prepared for his flight. His mission was launched on January 31st, 1961, aboard the Mercury Redstone 2 rocket. His name was not Charlie, so I kind of thought that was sad because he was named something completely different. But he became the first chimpanzee to go to space and return safely, proving that humans could perform tasks in a space environment. Basically, he was trained to pull levers in response to lights and sounds. His ability to perform these tasks in space demonstrated that humans could also maintain cognitive and motor functions in microgravity. The flight duration was a suborbital flight that lasted 16 minutes and 39 seconds, reaching an altitude of 157 miles and of speeds of 5,857 miles per hour.
Wow.
He had a safe landing. He splashed down in the Atlantic Ocean and was recovered safely through though slightly dehydrated and stressed, he was otherwise in good health. Enos was the first chimp in orbit. So there was a follow-up mission in November 29th, 1961, aboard the Mercury Atlas V, and he became the first chimpanzee to orbit the Earth. Enzo completed 2 orbits but experienced issues with malfunctioning equipment. Despite this, he performed his task correctly and was safely returned to Earth. These chimps obviously had rigorous preparation, and they kind of touched on that a little bit with Charlie and how Talbot was one of the people that was responsible for training him before he went. So I guess that part was kind of from what they had consulted with NASA before they filmed it. I guess that was kind of accurate. But they did start to have some ethical concerns about the use of animals in testing. While Ham and Enzo's survived their flights, animal welfare groups have since critiqued such experiments. I mean, I don't know, whatever. Ham actually lived for quite some time after that. He lived at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. when he retired. Later at a research facility in North Carolina where he died in 1983. Enzo, the one that successfully did the first orbit, actually sadly died of an illness less than a year after his flight. So the success of chimp missions paved the way for Alan Shepard, the first American astronaut to fly into space on May 5th, 1961, aboard the Mercury Redstone 3.
So less than a year before this film came.
Yeah. The difference between the US and the Soviet Union or Russia, whatever you want to call it at that time, we used chimps, they used a dog. If you actually look into the history of the dog that they used, it's actually a very sad history. It was a female dog. She was a stray dog on the street.
That's sad.
Yeah, they picked her out of all the other dogs because of her calm and happy demeanor. And she was kind of quiet. And then they continued to use space dogs, but they actually knew when they were sending her up there that they did not plan on her coming back alive.
Oh,
so it was kind of like, I guess I could see how people were upset.
At least she had one heck of a journey.
Yeah. I read into it. I don't think it was a pleasant heck of a journey. Anyway, so that was like some of the big differences there. We used chimps, they used dogs. I thought it was kind of interesting that the actual stuff happened in 1961 and this film came out in 1962. So obviously they probably were consulting with them around the time they were doing it. So, and it kind of made me sad that his name was Charlie instead of Ham or Enzo. But I don't know, some little quirky tidbits of live history that kind of coincided with this film. So I found out that the IMDb rating was 5.4 out of 10.
Okay.
You probably would agree with that because I don't think you were a big fan of this. I loved it.
All right. I'm interested here.
I guess like I enjoy comedies. It wasn't a tearjerker, so I was definitely on board for it. And the fact that the female was not an actual like Soviet spy and she was actually an alien, I thought was hilarious, and I loved it. I loved the quirkiness of it. I gave it a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. I would definitely watch it again. I know you probably wouldn't,
We're
but
not there yet.
whatever.
So
I enjoyed
I
it.
have to ask you here because this is important, and I don't know how important you think this is, but does this 7 out of 10 make its way to your list upon a star? Here's why I ask. Because if this 7 out of 10 moon pilot NASA's its way onto your list upon a star, which is fine if it deserves it,
It launches its way.
it's going to launch its way.
Mhm.
It's going to black hole its way, Fantasia, off of your list. Does this film knock Fantasia, the film that we no, come on, it's the third one. We've watched it. Go back and watch it. Go back and listen to our deep dive magicpod@gmail.com if you have your thoughts on it. Does this launch that to pull back the courage you already wrote down? Is it going to knock off Fantasia?
It is.
Off Fantasia has had its run from film number 3 to now, and it is getting the boot because that film was something else.
It was. I enjoyed it. Lots of nostalgia. But
this is film 57, and film 57 is knocking number 3 off the list.
I am in my comedy era, and I love a good laugh. So yes, Moon Pilot is making it onto my list. Moon Pilot is also going to. Are you ready for this?
Oh my God, Alice in Wonderland is so low. Peter Pan is so low. You're wild.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't really beat Donald, but the Moon Pilot is going to make it on my list. So, my list.
Will you regret this when we get to the 90s? Will you regret knocking Fantasia off already? Go ahead.
No. Anyway, so my list upon a star is 101 Dalmatians, The Parent Trap, Sleeping Beauty, Dumbo, Lady and the Tramp, The Three Caballeros, Moon Pilot, launched its way, and followed up by The Shaggy Dog, Peter Pan, and Alice in Wonderland.
There you go. Rest in peace, Fantasia. May we never speak about this on this podcast ever again.
Hate to tell you, but there's a reboot.
So
that might make it on my list again.
My list upon a star is not updating. This film was fine. It just wasn't. No, it just didn't have the spark I was looking for. So
you feel like this the way I felt about our last film?
Our last film was awesome. So
I wasn't a fan.
Speaking of our last film, so my list upon a star for all new or repeat viewers and listeners is number 1, 101 Dalmatians, then followed by Peter Pan, Alice in Wonderland, Babes in Toyland, Pinocchio, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Sleeping Beauty, still hanging on from the beginning, Lady and the Tramp, and the Swiss Family Robinson. Again, we said earlier, but we would love to hear from you. Deep dive in the magicpod@gmail.com. Tell us about when you realized that she was not a foreign spy. Maybe KJ is a foreign spy. We'll never know. But we're on Instagram, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube. Again, thank you for telling your friends. Deep dive in the magicpod@gmail.com. Our next film, we're staying in 1962 and we're going up to May. It is for film number 58. And it is another star-studded cast, probably one of the biggest star-studded casts since the Swiss Family Robinson. And honestly, it's probably the same people from Swiss Family Robinson. It is a film called Bon Voyage. Have you heard of it? Are you looking forward to it? We'll talk about it then.
Thanks for deep diving magic.
Bye.
Bye.